Well, over the past 2 weeks, protests have sparked not just here in our country, but all over the world. And people are joining in the fight against racial inequality and injustice to convey the message that Black lives matter. This after the latest killing of an unarmed black man at the hands of police. George Floyd, one of many lives wrongfully taken, leaving the world outraged, saddened, and fighting for equality and overall unity. Joining us this morning is Dr. Michael Carter with the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board of Lucas County to offer up some coping mechanisms during this time of distress. Dr. Carter, we thank you so much for being here this morning. 2020 has been such a tough year. How do you suggest people get through maybe the latest difficult situation, the tragic death of George Floyd? Even if we didn't know the man, it is really tough to see and tough to deal with, isn't it?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on your show this morning. I'm appreciative of that. I think this is a very important topic that we should all discuss and consider, that even though we may not be directly affected by COVID-19, many in our community are. And I think being a supporting ear, leaning that, giving that support to others and making sure that we have a sense of community. Community is one of the ways that we're going to be able to support each other through this process. And the Mental Health Recovery Service Board has established an emotional support line. So for those who may feel that they need help with coping or just a listening ear, they're able to dial that emotional support line, which is 419-442-0580.
Yeah, good to get that phone number out there, Dr. Carter. And also, there are stages of grief, aren't there, when someone dies in the way that George Floyd died? How do we deal with that? What are some of the steps we're going through? Obviously, there's anger involved in this, too. Maybe that's one of the perpetual phases here.
Absolutely. And I think more than the phases of grief, Tim, I think we need to look at are the common reactions, right? Because there's some really common reactions that happen that may be the indicator before we even talk about the stages of grief. Absolutely, you're going to have anger. You're going to feel loss. But, shock and numbness. The University of Berkeley University's health services through the University of California provided some coping with traumatic events and news in our community. And so they talk about moodiness, anxiety, confusion, helplessness, depression, fatigue. Those are all things that may be happening. And again, those are concerns that people may not normally experience or normally feel during this time, but others will feel. And that's why that number that I gave is so important.
Yeah, Dr. Carter, let's mention that phone number once again. It's 419-442-0580. That's the emotional support line that the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board has set up, 442-0580, very important. And obviously, Dr. Carter, we're also still dealing very much with the coronavirus impact. We are getting reopened here in society, but I'm sure there's still some anxiety over it. How should people be dealing with that at this point in the crisis?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, Tim, but it really is community. We have to support one another. We have to lean on those voices in our community that are in place to help us to survive and be strengthened. We have to utilize resources such as rescue as well. If you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling some type of way and you're fighting with your mental wellness. However, the reason why we put that emotional support line in place was because there's so many people in our community who have new feelings, they have new reactions, things they've never felt before. They don't have a mental health diagnosis, but they just needed someone to talk to. I think that's going to be one of the key things. I think spending time outside of our houses, Tim, like in the driveway, right? Walking to the store if that's possible, just getting fresh air, because we've been locked up in our houses now since March. And we've been under a quarantine that now you have the shock of coming back to reality, seeing people again. You have a pandemic on top of protests. It is a very trying time, but if you can connect to some of those things that you normally have, your faith community, a lot of places are providing services online. I think trying to stay connected to the things you were always connected to will be extremely important during this time.
And Dr. Carter, I know we're about out of time, but wanted to quickly ask you about how kids are handling both of these crises. What's your suggestion for how to help them through it?
I think having a listening ear, providing conversation to them, utilizing the resources in our community that all of the school systems have done an excellent job of providing for us, for those online connections. The after-school programs are providing things. I think trying to make their routines as normal as possible and just discussing with them how they're feeling and listening without a lecture.
All right, great advice, Dr. Michael Carter. Thank you so much for joining us from the Lucas County Mental Health and Recovery Services. We're doing great work. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thank you. You too.